We are approaching transfer season once again. For some, it is the best time of the year where Leeds United can get in all the players that they could possibly want, and it's lovely and shiny, and there's rumours every single day. And then on the other side, you've got the people who get very, very tired of the same nonsense rumours being circled unendingly. But some Leeds United fans are absolutely begging for a number 10 at the minute. It's a position that we're maybe missing out on, a creative passer that can cut through opposing lines with ease. However, those people might not necessarily like this little video that I'm making because reportedly Leeds United are likely to sell a number 10 relatively soon. In this video, I'm going to run through who the departing player is, why they might be leaving, what numbers and figures are involved, some signs for other Leeds players, whether or not this is the right move, and how it shows an interesting dilemma, and maybe some lessons that we can learn for the long-term planning of the squad. So, just to start with, we need to talk about who the departing player is, and it's someone that everyone thought had a really, really high ceiling at Leeds United, part of a duo of players that were in the same position. It's Sam Greenwood. Sam Greenwood is a player that we signed from Arsenal when he was very, very young, I think for maybe £1.5 million, something like that. Relatively cheap. Everyone thought he was a bargain at the time. And he played a little bit at Leeds. For example, I remember the fact that he had to play that match against Brentford when we managed to stay up in the Premier League. But since then, didn't hugely kick on, hasn't really proven himself at Leeds United, and has sort of spiralled the plug hole a little bit. Spent significant proportions of last season out on loan, is currently on loan at Preston, and that gets us to why they might be leaving, and that is because there is reportedly a buy clause in his contract with Preston. If, at the end of the season, Preston want to sign Sam Greenwood, they can absolutely go for that. When he's referred to Leeds United, Sam Greenwood has always sort of posed it this season as a, if I end up going back there, implying that he doesn't really want to, which tells me that he's definitely got a path out of the club, and that was agreed with in various reports that I've seen. In addition to that, we don't know too much in terms of the numbers involved. In terms of PSR, we don't need to worry as to whether it will be a profit or a loss because we signed him for very little money quite a while ago, so it'll be completely fine for us, essentially, nothing to worry about. Maybe it'll be in the $1 million, $2 million kind of range, but it's really hard to say when it's a young player that has clear potential but has come nowhere near really achieving it just yet, which sounds really, really harsh to say, but it also feels sort of accurate. He's not really stamped his authority on his time at Leeds United, and at Preston, I don't think he's super impressed either. And the sort of interesting side thing for this is, although it isn't necessarily a sign for these players, and it's not a guarantee in any way, shape, or form, but I think this has some very interesting signs for the likes of Joe Gelhardt. Joe Gelhardt, who, when we signed him, was a very, very promising striker, was regarded by many as the next Wayne Rooney. We signed him from Wigan for £1 million, and we only got him that cheap because Wigan were in administration at the time, badly needed money. And selling Gelhardt was one way that they could do that. Their most promising prospect in a damn long time. And we figured, yeah, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's see if he'll fit in at Leeds United. And there was a time where he did, where he managed to help save us from relegation in the same season that Sam Greenwood did. At that point, both he and Greenwood looked like they were going to be really, really promising big-name players at the club for years to come. But now, starting to feel like that isn't the case. Starting to feel that little bit more like, well, Gelhardt hasn't kicked on, can barely get into the squad. Greenwood isn't even at Leeds United, and I feel like a sale is just around the corner considering that clause is right there. So for me, it's a sign that players in that position of, we signed you as someone that was going to be really, really promising, and then nothing came of you. That sounds harsh as a way of phrasing it. You were signed to someone really, really promising, and then you didn't quite reach that really high potential, and you've been left behind by the rest of the squad. It says that maybe it's time to move on. So when it comes to the next question that I've got in my notes of is it the right move, I think it absolutely sort of has to be. Because Leeds at the moment are a club that need to keep growing. We're a club that need to make the right signings, need to make intelligent buying decisions to make sure that we are getting the most out of every single penny at the club. And if we are paying a portion of Sam Greenwood's wages, we don't know that for certain, but maybe. If we are paying Joe Gelhardt's wages for him to not play football and not even be picked in the 20 in a matchday squad sometimes, surely it's the right move to move these players on, not only for Leeds United, because we can reinvest that money in other more effective places, but for the players themselves. They're not going to want to spend their entire careers sat on a bench waiting for players around them to get injured enough for them to get a sub appearance. They're going to want to push on in their career and really make a difference and make a name for themselves. So I think it's absolutely the right move to sell Sam Greenwood at the end of this season in line with that clause that we are fairly sure exists, and to look for a move for Joe Gelhardt arguably in January for me, because we know we need probably a number 10 in January. Gelhardt isn't earning nothing, so it makes sense to say, look, we'll move you on, we can use some of that fund to get us a number 10 in. And it does pose a very interesting dilemma. I said that those players got left behind by Leeds United. That's because we signed them as these young stars that would grow with the team. But that meant that as these young stars, they immediately came into the squad, and then we got relegated, and we needed to push to not be relegated anymore. So in the next squad rebuild, we bought players that were better than they were, and they didn't get game time, and that meant they didn't develop, which meant that they didn't become those best versions of themselves that they could have been. And then the next summer came, and again, we've got to do a reshuffle. But again, Gelhardt and Greenwood aren't good enough to start for us, so you need to buy more players to make up for it. And you've got an interesting dilemma where you can buy young and promising players. Fantastic, brilliant. We saw that worked with Nonto. We saw that work with Somerville. But you need to do so if you're in a position where you can immediately guarantee they are going to get some minutes. Because the alternative is a case of a Sean McGurk, McKinstry, a Lewis Bate, as another example, where there is player after player after player after player that Leeds United have signed and said, you're one for the future, and then you've immediately needed to sign other midfield players, for example, for Lewis Bate to sort of take that place in the first team squad, and they don't get any minutes to grow into. So if you're signing these players, make sure they're ready to play or they won't play at all. We'll end up wasting transfer fees, wasting wages, and wasting developmental years of these players' careers. They needed to be playing in these years to become that best version of themselves, and our poor planning took it away from them. So there is a lesson for long-term planning here, and it is, if you are going to sign youngsters, make sure there's room for them. Because otherwise, everyone loses out. Everybody. Imagine if we didn't sign Greenwood, Gelhardt, players that didn't make it into the squad, and instead we signed someone that we desperately needed in the relegation season. We sign a pure finishing-oriented number 9 that is ready to come into the squad. Someone like a Chris Wood, or there's another shithousey guy that I've forgotten the name of that keeps coming down to the Championship, and I've forgotten his name. Might play for Norwich right now. It might come to me. It's not yet. That's fine. But long-term planning isn't always, here's a player that we can have for 10 years. It can be, okay, we'll rely on this player for 2 to 3 years and then we'll move into a younger player or something along those lines. But if you are trying to plan a footballer's career before they're even at the club, it's not going to work for you, not going to work for the player, not going to work for the selling club. What they might do depends on how much money we throw at them. But this is a lesson that we need to learn, I think, especially going into January, because January is when prices are inflated anyway. So we need to be careful around that. But ultimately, that is all what I think. As always, I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. It's always really appreciated. Subscribe if you're not yet. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and 58.4% of you aren't subscribed. It's more than half of you. Come on, you lazy buggers. You could also become a channel member, 99p a month, and you get videos like this one very, very early. This is going up at something like 1:30, and it's going to release to everyone else at 8 in the morning. So if you're up at weird hours, then you get it nice and early. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. We'll see you later. This whole thing's a shame because I really like Greenwood and Gelhardt. Not to be this time. Not to be.